Trey Lance is going to prove all the haters wrong, and I cannot wait to break it down tonight. Suneil also has some inside information. I cannot wait for him to drop that. And before we get to this intro, shout out to Charvarius Ward. I know that he was looking for prayers this morning. His daughter went into open heart surgery. I believe she's only about 6 months old. Sounds like she is out of open heart surgery. So I wanted to give a shout out to them. We are thinking about you, Mr. Charvarius Ward. Let's get into this intro. All right. Welcome back to Last Second Sports, where we are giving you our take down to the last second. And it's Tuesday, so I got my guy So Real, Suneil, in the building. What's up, Suneil?
Man, you see this nice tan. Just got back from a cruise to Mexico. So Your boy's shining a little bit. Got to ride a horse on the beach, bro. It was a good time, man.
Gosh, the visual that just came through my mind when you said that, I'm not even going to say it on the air. We can talk about it backstage, but glad to have you here. Glad to have you here. Glad you had fun on your cruise. Let's talk about that cruise for a second, because you even left me hanging backstage. You said, hey, I've got some insider info based off of this cruise about the 49ers. Why don't you give us a little bit more about what happened on your cruise here?
Yeah, so this is a cruise that left out of Long Beach. So one thing I got to mention is there were obviously people representing football teams, and there was literally two jerseys that I saw, or two teams represented. I saw one Cowboys jersey, and every other jersey was a San Francisco 49er jersey, San Francisco 49er hat. So the way that the team is traveling, and this could be just that it was out of the, out of California or whatever the case may be, but there was a lot of 49ers representing. I made a lot of friends just because they were wearing 49ers gear, and, just talk to them at the bar and whatnot. So it was a really dope experience. But I did meet a current NFL player that plays for a division rival of ours. Okay. So, just, picking his brain and we ended up hanging out the whole cruise and whatnot. But I asked him some questions, and it was funny when you told me about what the topic of the show was going to be. Obviously, I'm asking him about what he thinks about our quarterback situation, like what they feel about the 49ers. And he was, he was pretty open with me about things. So there's three takeaways that I took from the conversation with him. One is he actually has a good relationship with Colton McKivitz.
Okay. And
he said, you guys got a player in him. He's going to be fine. He actually, I think he actually, works out with him sometimes and knows him pretty well. And he said that you guys are going to be fine at right tackle with him there. So that was something that was, interesting. Obviously, if they're friends, take it with a grain of salt. But
for sure,
it seems like McKivitz is working hard, and at least to him, he felt like he was good enough to be a starter in the league. The second thing was they all, like the team and I guess the sentiment around the NFL is what he said is the reason why the 49ers are so good is because of Kyle Shanahan. So that was something that was interesting to me, because he said that Kyle Shanahan, everybody knows Kyle Shanahan is the reason why the 49ers are so good. That's why they're able to have so much success, even if they don't have a quarterback, even if they don't have that. So it's kind of interesting because there's all these debates about Kyle Shanahan through Twitter and, just in our content creator circle or whatnot. But coming from a player of a division rival, the esteem that Kyle Shanahan is held to the players of the rivals, it tells a different story. Then I asked about the quarterback situation, right? So this was kind of interesting because obviously he's been facing the 49ers. He's a fairly young player, so he's been around, I think, for like 2 or 3 years. So he saw Jimmy G play, and then he obviously knows about Brock Purdy and Trey. So this is what this is the summation. He said, clearly Kyle Shanahan wanted something different, which is why they traded up so many assets to get a guy like Trey Lance. And Trey Lance is completely different from Jimmy Garoppolo. And so I was like, well, there's talks about them trading Trey Lance and all this kind of stuff. And he's like, look, if Kyle Shanahan wanted another quarterback like Jimmy Garoppolo, he would have just kept Jimmy Garoppolo. They want Trey Lance to succeed, and we know what we're going to get when we play against a Jimmy Garoppolo. However, Trey Lance gives you some things that we can't even, it's harder to game plan for because of his ability. He's like, he basically said Trey Lance is going to be the guy. And he said Brock Purdy, and this is his terms, Brock Purdy's just Jimmy 2.0. And it was kind of interesting.
Hold on. I just want to be clear. Like, I didn't know that this was going to, you wouldn't tell me at all. You're like, I'm just going to save it for the show. I'm like, dude, come on, just like spill the beans. I do know where the player's from. At least I know that. You're not willing to give that. Totally fine. But just to recap for everybody who's just joined, Suneil was on a cruise with a player currently in the NFL that is on a division rival of the 49ers. This is a player that plays, right? This is a player that, so we'll just leave it at that. This is what the player said, talking about our quarterback situation. So continue.
Yeah. So that was just interesting, obviously the takeaways about when he talked about the 49ers. And it was just an interesting take. We obviously have our own opinions and all that kind of stuff, but you got to take, I guess, people that are actually going to be playing for the team or playing against the 49ers, how they view it. It's kind of interesting just to see, what his thoughts were.
Yeah, definitely. I think, I don't take what players say as gospel. I never will, just because, to your point, a lot of times it is, hey, I know these other players, so I'm going to hold them in higher regard. Or, I've seen this player from afar, or I'm taking in what the teammates of this player are saying, or I've played against them, but it's been sparing. So I don't want to just say, hey, this player's right. I told you, Trey Lance. Like, I'm not going there with it. But it is interesting to hear what an opponent who has seen all three quarterbacks across the field and says, hey, Trey Lance is the one that scares us the most. That is an interesting thing to say. I definitely think that it's not nothing. That's for sure. I appreciate you giving that to us here on the show. And that's pretty cool, man. I'm glad that you had fun on your cruise at the very least. And but that was kind of nice getting a little bit of inside information for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. For sure. And like I said, like you mentioned it again, take this with a grain of salt. I'm not breaking any news. I'm just, telling you what I learned from, a division opponent. So,
yeah, I think that's super cool. Steven, so this happens to a lot of people. This is what I always say, and it seems to work. If you unsubscribe and then resubscribe and then hit the bell notification, everybody that I've talked to, it says it fixes it. I don't know what the deal is. It's a YouTube thing. It's not just this channel. I've heard, a lot of people from other channels say the same thing. It just kind of is what it is. So if you unsubscribe and then resubscribe and hit the bell notification, it should fix the problem from everybody that I've talked to and had do that. So I would just say, try that. I don't know what's going on. That kind of sucks. Definitely don't want to miss that. Great, JM. Definitely make sure that you rewind and watch the beginning. What's not to buy? It's like you act like we just said that there's some inside information that we have. He was on a cruise with a player from another team. That's what they said. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Like, there's no reason to lie about that. That would be stupid. So anyways, appreciate it, but there's nothing to not buy. It's not that big of a deal. All right, let's talk about Trey Lance though. And I actually want to show this because we've had 3 videos come out in the last 5 to 6 days of him throwing. Now, the first 2 that came out were more just like kind of upper body, You didn't really get to see a lot. And then the ones that came out today were actually showing everything that he went through. And I have some takeaways as far as the mechanics that I'm going to break down and kind of show to everybody. But before we get fully into that, Suneil, just overall, the last week or so of Trey Lance talk, I know you were on a cruise. These videos came out. Twitter went crazy, of course. It's like everybody's starving for a little bit of information. They finally get a little bit and they just love it. It explodes. Haters hate, lovers love. It's just what the way that it works when these things drop. But it was a big deal over the weekend. And knowing that that's happened, that all that dropped, and then also another rumor came out where Trey Lance might possibly be had, according to this source, that the 49ers would take a second and a fourth for Trey Lance. So just the last couple days of chatter around Trey Lance, going from the highest highs to the lowest of lows, just what are your takeaways from everything?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was kind of good to be able to process the videos without all of the Twitter, feedback, because it's just, I'm not going to be like, there's not going to be any bias from what I read and all that kind of stuff. So I'll actually watch the videos on Last Second Sports Shorts. So a little plug to the channel where I actually saw the videos. But my biggest takeaway is great to see him throwing again. He looks in great shape. The one thing I was noticing with his throws is what he's doing with his eyes. So that's something that I think is a little bit, at least in previous videos, I didn't notice that as much as far as what he's doing
just
with
eye
his
manipulation.
Eyes. Yeah, eye manipulation, and just how focused he was on his receivers and stuff like that. So maybe that's something, or it's nothing. I mean, it's hard to tell in 20-second clips when there's no defenders or pads or anything like that. But for me, it was great to see him moving around. It's great to see him healthy enough to start throwing and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, and as far as the trades, when it comes to 49ers stuff in the media, I just like Chalk talks right here. I'm not buying this at all. Like, I just don't believe it. I just feel like that the 49ers front office has been so good at not leaking anything that I don't see the benefit of why the 49ers would leak that. So that's what makes me believe that it's not true. However, in one of those videos, he was he was throwing on at TCU. TCU's colors are purple. Purple is the color for the Minnesota Vikings.
I like it. Yeah. Though this is good. Yeah, just throw it all together.
So Kirk Cousins, Trey Lance, second and the fourth. Purple. So it could be that. It could be that. Subliminals. They're telling us. Trey's telling us without telling us.
Oh, that's so funny, bro. Wow. That's good. I did not think you were going to take it there. Thank you for doing that. That's hilarious. Definitely love it. Okay. So again, these are practice throws. These are throws in shorts, what have you. But I'm going to show you some throws from his past and just what I noticed. Again, it's just a couple throws. Who knows? What I will say is Trey Lance has gradually improved each step of the way. So from that first season to the next offseason, which was last offseason, you saw a shorter stride, and that shorter stride kind of closed up that throwing motion to where it was much more elongated that first year, closed it up a little bit with the shorter stride. That's what you saw him work on from year 1 to year 2. That and climbing in the pocket, you saw both of those, and they were able to hold up through the games that you saw played. Although it's a small sample size, the mechanics held. So now he's added a change in basically the base of his throwing motion. And this is really cool to see because Coach McAvoy, who is Quincy Avery's right-hand man, multiple interviews here on the channel. In fact, he's the one hiking the ball to Trey at his pro day that you'll see here in a second. He talks a lot about Trey's inaccuracies because his head moves up and down too much with his throwing motion. And that was something that they had been working on. Well, that is clearly, at least in these videos, fixed. Does it hold once he gets into training camp and the bullets start flying? I don't know. But for right now, you are seeing that change. And I'm going to show you exactly what I'm talking about here. So let me add this to the stream. Okay. So this is him at his pro day. I'm going to show you his pro day. I'm going to show you last preseason, or excuse me, last training camp, because I want it to be like shirts and shorts. And then I'm going to show you the video from today and break down exactly what I'm seeing. So what you're going to notice is when he drops back, his hips are pretty high. And right as he goes to throw, his hips drop and then he raises up. And because of that motion, that's going to change your eye level. And when your eye level changes off your target, that can cause erratic throws. So it's very, very obvious here in this one. It'll be less obvious in the training camp video, and then it's non-existent in today's videos that you saw. But I just want to break this down for you and show you what I'm seeing. Okay, here he goes. Hips are high. Gets ready to throw. See how the hips drop. And then he raises back up. Okay. So then we'll go to the next video, which was last year's training camp. Hips high, goes to throw, drops the hips, and then raises back up. Now, naturally, when you throw, you want your hips to raise. That's a natural motion. But you don't want to, as you're going to throw, drop and raise. You want to be in that drop position and then naturally raise. So then here's the video that came out today. We're going to have two throws here. So here's the first one. Here's his hips, staying level, and then he raises into the throw. And then you're going to see it again here. Hips stay level. Not a dip. Hops into the throw. And there you go. So that is the biggest difference that I am seeing from last year, really through year 1 to year 2, and then even into this year. That is the biggest difference. And that is something that I know that they had been working on for a while. They just couldn't. Each offseason, you can only fix so much. You can't rework everything. So last offseason, it was a shorter stride, which shortened the upward motion, or the upper body motion as well. This year, they've worked on this, and it's clear. It's showing. So this is a big deal because this will cause a lot of inconsistencies when it comes to accuracy, because your eye level is changing as you're going through your throwing motion. So that's what I'm seeing right away as the biggest difference between really rookie and last year Trey to this year. So I figured I would share that with everybody. It's not about how many times you change your throwing motion. It's a constant progress. So his throwing motion hasn't changed or been completely overhauled. One step at a time. Every year, quarterbacks tweak something. Every quarterback in the league tweaks something. This is not out of the realm of normalcy or anything like that. So each year, you're going to work on something. You're going to try to improve on something. Last year, it was the stride. This year, it's the dropping of the hips. So it's not a complete overhaul of his throwing motion in any sort of fashion whatsoever. But that is what I'm seeing. Figured I would share it with you guys. Let me pull that off here and then go here. Any thoughts that you have on that, Suneil?
Yeah, I mean, I thought that was a great breakdown. Obviously, once again, the clips that come out are going to be the ones they want us to see. So all of this it doesn't matter if, it's not consistent and translated into on the field, because, all of this stuff is easy to work on when there's no pressure on you. Has it ingrained in him to the point where now it's reaction, or does he go back to his, innate tendencies, when it's on the field type of thing? So, I mean, it's great to see. Like I said, for me, the biggest takeaway is that he's healthy and throwing. He looks in great shape. You love to hear who he's working out with. I mean, you're working out with a guy like Patrick Mahomes. You're only going to get better, right? Because, Patrick Mahomes is possibly arguably the best quarterback in the league and could go down as the greatest of all time with the trajectory that he's going on. So for me, it's great to see that Trey uses his off season to really become a better quarterback. Once again, you and I are big fans of Trey, and a lot of it has little to do. I think what we like about him the most isn't even what he does on the field, right? It's who he is as a person and work ethic and all that kind of stuff. I do say though, I gotta say though, man, coming from somebody who's follically challenged, Trey, make sure if
Follically
they
challenged.
if,
Why?
make
Why
sure
is
when they take.
hair a topic on our show often?
I'm just
Like
saying
that's
because I know how Jesse you feel about people that are follically challenged and the
right,
jokes that
right,
you
right.
will make about us with those issues. So
Uh-huh.
Trey, just make sure if you're gonna hold on to it, bro, make sure when they taking pictures of you after workout, you got a hat on, bro, because look, the internet will go wild, especially my co-host right here. Definitely, if he didn't love you as much, he would definitely be bringing up those pictures and making jokes, so.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. The hairline thing got him lit up for sure. You got to let it go, man. It's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. Just let it go. Let it go, or get the surgery to fix it. There are surgeries out there. You can afford it. You can afford the surgery. Maybe on the second contract. That's the trick. Or maybe it's the helmet. You can't do it with the helmet. No, I don't know. We'll see. But you either got to let it go or you got to get it fixed. This in between thing is not working for Trey, for sure. But yeah, a lot of people, roasting Trey Lance on this one. Okay, let's talk about the QB room as a whole and kind of compare it to maybe what you see around the league. I hear a lot of people say that the 49ers QB room and not necessarily knowing who's going to start and having three quarterbacks that are capable of playing is a good thing. This is a really, really good thing. Is it though? I mean, for me, this is my preference. I would rather have a clear hierarchy to that quarterback room. I would like to know that day one, this is my starter, this is my backup, this is my third string if we carry one. And there's a clear hierarchy to what's going on versus this. Yeah, I mean, maybe if this guy's here, he's the leader in the clubhouse, but anybody can take his job if they play good enough. I'm kind of done with not knowing what's going on. I just want to know if we've got the franchise guy on this team, what is the hierarchy, and going from there. I'm not saying that having multiple good QBs is a bad thing. That is definitely a good thing because if something happens to QB1 or even QB2, you want somebody that can come in and play well. But not having a clear hierarchy as to what's going on, I'm not a big fan of that. What do you think? Do you think it's a strength? Would you prefer to have a clear hierarchy? Like, what are your thoughts?
So, I mean, I think that there's not a hierarchy is kind of goes back to that saying, if you have two quarterbacks, you don't have a quarterback, right? Kind of situations. But I'm also here's the toughest thing when it comes to commentary about NFL and fans and just critics and stuff in general. It's like if it's not something you're used to, automatically it's not a good thing. And what I mean by that is like if it's not like the prototypical this or it's done like this everywhere else. So if it's not done that way, that automatically makes it not something that could work. Well, 3 out of the last 4 years, the 49ers have made it to the NFC Championship game. We've been in the same situation all of those years, right? Questions at quarterback, don't really know who the start is going to be, all that kind of stuff. And somehow this team continues to be one of the top teams, not only in the NFC, but in the NFL, and constantly, not just from fans, but just teams around the league. The 49ers have never been a joke, no matter who the quarterback is. So I think a part of us that's holding on to this, man, I wish we knew who our franchise quarterback, has to kind of let go of it a little bit, because we've also had more success in the last 4 years as 49er fans than technically we've had 20 years before, when we may have known what a hierarchy of quarterbacks are, right? When we knew Alex Smith was our starting quarterback, when we knew Cap was our starting quarterback, or whatever, insert whomever we knew the starting quarterback was at that time. So I think it makes sense for other teams to know kind of like a hierarchy. I think for the organization that the 49ers are right now, with Kyle Shanahan and his skill set, and the front office and their skill set, as far as putting a team together, I don't know if it's as important to have this hierarchy. It's more important to just have the best player at that position play. And that's why I think it's just a unique situation, Jesse, where unfortunately the quarterbacks that we have that are quote unquote could be the franchise guys, haven't been able to play long enough for us to know. So until we get the stretch of a year, 2 years out of any of these quarterbacks, it's going to constantly be this way. But I don't necessarily look at it like it's a negative, because the 49ers are still one of the favorites to make it to the Super Bowl and win a Super Bowl. So I understand your point and hear it, but I think it's just a different situation for the 49ers. So it's not as important as it might be for other NFL organizations.
Let me bring this up to you, because I talked to Ryan about this last week, and my take was that for 1 year, obviously, if a certain player or players play for the 49ers at quarterback, we're going to figure out much easier who or if that franchise guy exists on this roster. But for just this year, the impact, I don't know if it matters which quarterback plays. I mean, if I told you, let's say the end result is 49ers lose in the NFC Championship again. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's the end result. But I told you that was the result with Brock Purdy or Trey Lance or Sam Darnold. Would any of that surprise you? Because to me, maybe the regular season changes up a little bit, but as far as the end result and how far the 49ers make it, I think that there's a possibility that all three of these quarterbacks could be the one driving the ship to make it that far. And I don't think the overall outcome will change that much for this season. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, at that point, I guess the difference is, Jesse, that where maybe the player doesn't matter as much because the end result could be the same regardless, the age of that player could matter, right? Because obviously the rookie contract players are cheaper. So if you can get the same level of play without having to pay them as much, that is the ideal, because you could pay other players around him type of situation.
For sure.
If Sam Darnold ends up being the guy, you're not going to be able to pay him $3 million next year. You know what I mean? You're going to have to sign him to an extension and bigger money, and then you don't have that same opportunity, right? So yeah. I think that's where it plays a role. But I agree with you. Like, I think we've had a long enough sample size with Kyle Shanahan where we keep acting like he doesn't know what he's doing doesn't make sense anymore. Like, this guy knows how to coach. This team is constantly competing. And I've said this, I put this on a Twitter post. So for some reason, NFL team critics or 49er critics feel like they're vindicated if the 49ers don't win a Super Bowl. All their criticisms about Kyle Shanahan and his quarterback situation and all that kind of stuff is warranted, and they feel like they're geniuses. Well, 31 teams every single year don't win the Super Bowl. So you have it's something like a 95% chance that your team that you're criticizing isn't going to win the Super Bowl. And it has nothing to do with what you talked about, but somehow you feel like you're vindicated and are an NFL expert. You're not, bruh. Like, the fact that Kyle Shanahan.
Oh, I know you're not talking to me, because I'm clearly an expert.
No,
I don't. I mean, have I ever been wrong about anything? No, I'm just kidding.
All the time. But yeah, that so to me, I just think Kyle Shanahan wins in different ways, man. Like, I always, I'm one of the biggest Shanahan stands. I'm always one to say, look, the biggest criticism for that's accurate is that, you never really know who his quarterback is. However, like you just mentioned, it hasn't mattered. Like, it hasn't mattered as far as the success that Kyle Shanahan has had. Now, until he wins a Super Bowl, he's not going to be goated or anointed. Everybody's going to still criticize him, and that's the chip on his shoulder that he needs to get off. However, look, the team is in a really great situation, and I guess the little progress we can mention is before, when we had three quarterbacks, it was like Jimmy Garoppolo and two guys that shouldn't probably even be in the league.
And Nick Mullins.
Yeah, exactly. Or Brian Hoyer, what I mean? So the fact that at least we've gotten to a point where we're having two or three actual NFL quarterbacks on our roster is showing that there's progress, right? I don't know if that means anything, but to me, I think, having the three quarterbacks that we do have on the roster is a lot better than what the quarterback situation has been in past years.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. And that's what I'm saying. Like, having 3 quarterbacks that are capable is a good thing. Not having a clear hierarchy is where I draw the issue. And I think, again, based on who plays, obviously, if Trey plays, we know a lot more about who Trey Lance is as a quarterback. If Brock Purdy plays, we know a lot more about Brock Purdy as a quarterback. So those would be more ideal than Sam Darnold playing. And I don't think Sam Darnold is a good quarterback by any means. My stance has not changed. But in this system with these players, Kyle Shanahan for a year, I wouldn't be shocked if the end result was the same with all 3 of them. I don't think it really matters that much for this season alone. That's just me personally. I think that they could all get us just as far as the other one. That's my personal opinion. Now,
and it goes back also, Jesse, to what that NFL player was telling me is Kyle Shanahan is really what makes this 49ers team run. And what I mean by that is it's easier to play quarterback in a Kyle Shanahan system than many other systems, right? Your quarterback he makes quarterbacks look great. Like I said, Nick Mullins broke a rookie record, being quarterback under him, and he was an undrafted quarterback. So to me, I think that because of what Kyle Shanahan is able to do with his scheme, because of the team that Lynch and Adam Peters and the front office as a whole has been able to surround any quarterback with, it's probably one of the top 3 easiest places to play as a quarterback, just because you got guys wide open and you have a lot of talent to throw the ball to, hand the ball off to, and stuff like that. So I think it goes further to your point that as long as you're a capable quarterback, you could probably have success in the system.
Yeah, definitely. Texas, I he was basically saying that depending on the chat that you go in or the channel that you watch, the chats are very different as far as fan bases or sectors of the fan base. You come to my chat, maybe Grant's chat, I would imagine, probably going to be a lot more pro Trey Lance. I would say Croc's chat would be maybe 50-50. You go to like Lombardi or Brad or Larry, it's going to be more Brock Purdy pro. That's just the way it is. And that's cool. I mean, that's actually a really good thing that people feel like, hey, there's a content creator out there that represents what I think. Now, what I would challenge people to do is maybe you don't like me or you don't like Larry or whoever. I would challenge you to watch their content anyways, because maybe they will throw something out that you weren't thinking about. Maybe they will challenge your thinking. So I would say don't just live in a silo, but most people are going to gravitate towards those who have the same opinion as them. I think that's a pretty normal thing. So it doesn't surprise me at all, man. Not at all. And that's why I appreciate you, is because I do know that you go to all these chats and you're willing to state your opinion. What's up, Zach? How you been, man? He says, Mr. So Real needs a backdrop. Am I right? I agree. The problem is Suneil has 1 hour out of his cell that he can spend with us, and then he's got to go back. So it's just, you're not going to get a lot back there. It's just the way that it works.
I use my my gym time for this on the yard.
Yeah.
But I don't get to see outside today.
Your Tuesday gym time for sure. Yep. Yeah, that makes total sense, man. Definitely get it. All right, let's get to the next topic. Okay, give me something on this 49er team that you think is underrated. It could be anything. It could be a unit. It could be a player. It could be a coach. Anything that you want. It could be the stadium if you want it to be. I don't know. Anything that you think is underrated when it comes to the San Francisco 49ers.
I think it's going to be the offensive line. And the reason why I think the
I hate your guts, by the way.
Why you was about to pick that?
I actually am, and I'll tell you.
You know what? That's crazy. You're finally right. But the reason why I say the offensive line is, I was one of the advocates for the offensive line even last year, and all the pushback that I got was continuity, cohesiveness, experience, lack of this, lack of that. Some of that was coming from here, but now all of a sudden the same offensive line. Now all of a sudden the same offensive line is bringing back 4 out of the 5 starters, right? 80% of a top 10 offensive line is coming back. The rookies and second-year players have another year under their belt of playing high-level NFL football. We still have the best left tackle in the league, and we just realized that even though maybe Brendel isn't, a top three, a top 3 center in the league, he's definitely more than just a serviceable center, and he played well enough, and even maybe above average than most centers. So to me, I think this offensive line, then, talked about Colton McKivitz, the gentleman that I, was on the cruise with told us that he can be great. And we've seen flashes out of Colton McKivitz on the left as a left tackle. And the fact that they're deciding and going with him, that hierarchy thing that you're talking about, there's a hierarchy at right tackle at least. And, go out there and really, at least, even if you could get, 70, 80% of what McGlinchey is able to do out of McKivitz, you're talking about another top 10 offensive line that's going to look better just because of the weapons that are behind him, especially if it's a guy like Trey, obviously a full year of CMC, Elijah Mitchell, all those guys. It also helps to play in front of, that much talent.
Yeah, definitely. Red Eye says the NFL charging $3.49 for YouTube access. Reddit streams are free. Here's what I'll say about it. I'm a YouTube TV consumer. Saves me about $60 a month on what I was paying for actual cable. And my wife is not willing to just like choose streaming services. So she wants some sort of TV access. So I've been on YouTube TV for about 2 years now. I absolutely love it. I'm glad that the NFL Sunday ticket is coming there. And if you buy it before like June 10th, you get $100 off. I do also like, and I mean, maybe this was the case with DirecTV. I could never figure it out, but they're giving an option regardless of who your service is through to also purchase it. Now it's $100 more. You still get the $100 break if you buy it before like June 10th or whatever that date is, but at least people have an option. So, for those that are interested, I am fine with it. I'm definitely going to get it. I mean, I hate being in Tampa and trying to find a shoddy way to watch games. It's not worth it. Like for me, I got to have I want it on the big screen. I don't want any service interruption whatsoever. I want this thing to work. So I'm definitely going to take advantage of it, but I understand. Yes, it's not cheap by any means. It is not cheap. I'm just happy that there is an alternative option to what DirecTV had going for sure. I actually was going to go offensive line as well. And we've talked a little bit about this. My stance really hasn't changed. I mean, obviously it would have been nice to get a right tackle, but there really weren't right tackles out there that were an upgrade to Mike McGlinchey. So unless you were going to pay the fraction of a price of a Mike McGlinchey, it wasn't worth it to go get one of those guys. Really, the one place I thought they could have upgraded, chose not to, was center. That being said, the players, 4 out of the 5 players are the same, Suneil. But if you look at left guard, center, right guard, all of those guys started for their first year, which means they can all elevate their game. And if they do, and I don't think it's that far-fetched that they would do so going into their second full year of starting, knowing what it's like to be a player in the NFL. If those 3 elevate their game, even if right tackle is a step back from what they had in Mike McGlinchey going to McKivitz or whoever, you're still an improved offensive line. And I think it's one of those areas that we're definitely worried about, but I think it's a bit overstated how much the offensive line is going to take this big step back. I don't necessarily think that is going to be the case. I'm not saying it's going to be better, but I think it can at the very least, hold serve with what it was last year if those 3 take a step forward. So I agree with you. That was my underrated one as well.
And just for everybody in the chat, Jesse is being sponsored by YouTube TV. So take this with a grain of salt as well.
Yeah, if you want an extra $50 off, you can go to YouTube TV /last seconds. No, I'm totally joking.
No, but I think that's an interesting debate that I think we'll have, going into, especially after the draft and kind of seeing what's going on. I do think that this offensive line has the potential to be better because you mentioned the three players that started for the first time in their career. You would expect them to be better this year than they were last year, right? So that's 60% of the offensive line getting better. Even if there is a drop off from McKivitz to what McGlinchey was giving, you expect same play out of out of the left tackle, and then 60% is going to be better because they have a year of experience and playoff experience in there. And then, McKivitz, I do think there's potential for this offensive line to be even better than they were last year.
Yeah, definitely. I think that there is that possibility. I don't think it's that far fetched to think that three guys who started for the first time in their career could take a step forward. Mm-hmm. I would assume that you learn a lot from year 1 to year 2, especially when you get that playing time under your belt. So let's talk about something on this team that might be a little bit overrated going into this year. I swear if you take the same one again, I'm going to lose it.
So I'm going to go special teams.
Okay.
So, and the reason why I think,
that's good.
Yeah.
Good start.
Well, I mean, look, you can't be right all the time, Jesse. You got to be wrong every now. I mean, you're mostly wrong. So the fact that you got one right is, cheers to you. But
kudos to me.
Yeah, last year we expected this big jump out of the special teams because they really put a focus on it, and I think that the special teams was better, but I don't know if they necessarily were as strong as we expected them to be. So I'm going into this year, we lost, some players that I think were good on the special teams. We obviously don't have Robbie Gould as the kicker anymore. I think that Ray didn't show us what we wanted to see from him as a returner, right? I don't know if we necessarily flipped the starting field position as much as we wanted to out of the special teams. And, to me, I think that stuff, I mean, obviously we still have the draft and all that kind of stuff to get that better, but I think that's the biggest question mark. So I don't know if it answers the overrated position, but I'm taking it as where I look at where maybe there's biggest weakness. And I would say that special teams would be that unit for me.
Yeah, definitely. I think it would fit the overrated because I really feel like a lot of us thought like, oh man, they spent so much in the offseason trying to perfect it. And it did get better. Like as the year went along, I think it did improve, but there were some shaky moments there where the special teams was a minus, which was a big shock for as much as they had spent. Mm-hmm. So I agree. And then going into this year, different kicker, that changes things. So we'll see how it plays out. I want to get to this super chat real quick. Cryptic says, when does Bosa get paid? Usually the 49ers are much later on paying players. I mean, this thing might drag out into August. That wouldn't shock me by any means. What would kind of surprise me is if it happened before June. I would say that the 49ers take their time with these things. So don't know for sure, but expect it to drag out a little bit. Does he get more than Hargrave? Yes, by a wide margin. And does he take a team-friendly deal? No, not at all. Not at all. He won't. These Bosa brothers and their family know how to get paid. They expect to get paid. And coming off of Defensive Player of the Year, he will be the highest paid defensive lineman in the NFL. Guarantee that will happen for sure. So
it might be structured in a way that benefits the 49ers, sure, but he's getting all his money.
Yeah, and that's it. Like it depends on when the money kicks in, when are the outs, when can the restructures be done. There's a lot of little details that happen, but as far as the overall or the average per year, I expect it to be the highest in the league for sure. I would say for me, the most overrated thing on this team right now is their depth on the defensive side of the ball. I think that we've gotten kind of used to the 49ers just having this super deep defensive line, and even the secondary has been pretty deep over the last couple of years, at least to start the season. Right now, I think that depth is dwindled quite a bit, especially when it comes to the edges and when it comes to that secondary. Now, we still have a draft. We'll see how we feel about the players that they do draft, but right now there is, I think, an area of opportunity when it comes to some of that depth. and recouping some of that. Now, offensive side of the ball, there's a lot of depth. I mean, they got 3 quarterbacks, they got 4 running backs, you got tons of wide receivers. The offensive line, we talked about some of those guys. There's some good depth there in guys like Feliciano. So Zakel, there's players, but on the defensive side, I think the interior defensive line is pretty stout. There's a lot of players there, but when you look at the edge pieces, when you look at that secondary, there's some room to go get some guys, and hopefully they get that through the draft and what have you. But that would be one of those things that I think in the past we have relied on. Right now, I would not rely on the depth in those two things. And so based off of the way it's been in the past, people probably assume like, hey, we're good. These things are always there. Right now, that's not the case.
I mean, I'd push back in the sense that I just think it's not well known. I mean, you're not right. So no, but I do think that I agree with you. I think that a lot of the one thing that I would bet on about the 49ers draft is it's going to be more defensive players than offensive players. Sure. So I do think a lot of that depth is going to come, but I think there's some players on this team that are going to play major roles that were drafted, you know, in the last 2 years, right? So you look at, you said the secondary, right? So I do think that they get somebody in the draft definitely as a safety because they needed to develop the next safety to pair up with Hufanga. But I think Samuel Womack plays a bigger role this season, right? And it might not even be at the nickel. He might be the first off the bench on the outside, right? Because that's I think where he is most comfortable and where he played, you know, mostly in college. So if Lenore gets injured or Ward gets injured, you know, I think Samuel Womack jumps into that. So you're 3 deep there, I would say. They're probably going to draft a couple cornerbacks as well. I think the linebackers, they're set there. And I like the pieces that they brought in on the defensive line. And we've known that, you know, Kosterick is able to develop those guys as long as they have some talent there. And we have some, you know, former first-round picks that they brought in. Obviously, we have Drake Jackson that's going to be there on the edge. Kalia Davis is coming back off of an injury. He was drafted last year that we didn't get to see at all. There's a lot of, you know, a lot of good sentiment about him for the 49ers. I think that he could be maybe a replacement for Armstead when, you know, when they decide, you know, what to do with Armstead. Obviously, they brought in Hargrave. So I don't know, Jesse. I don't know about this one, man. I think the defense is actually pretty stout. I think it's looking again like a top 5 defense right now. And that's even without the draft and whoever else might get signed, right? There's still some players out there that probably won't sign till after the draft. Who knows if the 49ers get one of those as well.
You see how he does this? He goes on this big, long thing. And then at the end, he changes the take, completely switching what I said, which I didn't even say. He made it sound like I said the defense can't be a top 5 defense. You're such a hater, Suneil. I can't believe I have you
overrated.
This is
How
crazy.
could you overrate a top 5 defense? That makes no sense.
No,
How could they be overrated if they're
I didn't
still top
overrate
5?
the defense. I overrated the depth.
You're saying that they're overrated.
Listen, I'm taking applications for the Tuesday show. Hit me up. The inbox is open.
He's tired of getting schooled. He's tired of getting, you know what? I've been using my yard time for this anyway. So look.
Right, yeah. Yeah, you got to hit the weights. I feel
there's enough juice boxes that I could be saving than doing this show.
Hanif says, do you think we'll take a tight end in the draft and what round? I do think they're going to take a tight end. I think this draft is very deep at tight end. I'll say that first pick in round 5 is where the tight end gets taken, would be my guess. And I think that they'll get somebody who's actually pretty decent, that film will be broken down and we'll probably end up liking him. So I'll say that first pick in round 5 for sure is where they're going to go. We'll see. I mean, I do expect them to get a tight end. And I think, like I said, it is a deep draft. We'll see how it plays out, but that'll be my guess on that one.
I think tight end is a lock for sure.
I think it's needed. It's definitely needed.
Safety, tight end are 2 that you could say are a lock.
Safety, tight end. I think they need another edge. They'll probably draft some sort of offensive lineman because that's what they do. Maybe even a quarterback. So we'll see. I'm curious to see what comes out of this draft for sure and how many picks they end up making. All right, a year ago today on the show, we were talking about Debo Samuel and possible trade talks, what was going on there. You fast forward a year, and there's another wide receiver that we're talking about possibly being traded. A little bit different circumstances. Last year, Debo requested the trade. This year, Ayuk has not requested a trade, but teams have asked about Ayuk behind the scenes, supposedly. So different circumstances. But the question that I have for you is, now that we are a year removed from Debo not being traded and signing that massive extension, do you think, in hindsight, it was the right move bringing Debo back? Or if you had a chance to redo it, would you have traded Debo Samuel?
That's tough.
It is tough, man.
Well, the reason why it's tough is because at that moment we didn't have CMC, right? So
Right.
that if you were to trade Debo, that sets off a pattern that may lead to not having CMC on the team, right? So to me, having CMC on the team is the best move that they made last season. So I would say do it the same way because I think that CMC is such a huge addition to this offense. And clearly we saw once he was inserted into the offense, how this offense took off. Because you would probably have gotten, a couple of seconds or a couple of thirds or a second and a third, what the packages were looking like. So I don't know, man. I know Debo's your favorite player on the team. He has done nothing to warrant him not being on this team. He plays hard. He's, always impactful when he's on the field. But, the addition of, I think Brandon Ayuk's ability and CMC being on the team, looking back, you look at Debo and just kind of say, well, if you could have gotten a first for him and saw the right tackle position or upgrade at center or whatever, would this team be even better? I don't know. But I'm going to say, no, I wouldn't want to do it. I wouldn't want to. I think we re-signed Debo just because I like him as a player on the team, and I'd rather have him on my team than not on the team.
Man, this one's tough because I'm trying to think of what they could have gotten for Debo then. It was obviously first round pick. We know that was on the table from the Jets. I think they probably could have pulled the first and maybe even Elijah Moore from them because they just kind of fell out of love with Elijah Moore. Now, Elijah Moore did just get traded, so I'm curious to see what he does. I don't even remember what he went for. I don't think it was a lot though. So I think they could have got.
Pittsburgh had a deal on the table for him too. Not Pittsburgh.
Yeah,
or was it
I don't know.
The Ravens? One of those teams I thought were willing to give
Detroit did for sure. Detroit definitely did, but theirs was much, much worse. Let's see. Jets agree to trade 3-year wide receiver Elijah Moore. I'm trying to see what they actually got for him to see if it's even realistic. So I don't want to just throw it out there for no reason. Okay. Buy low, second round pick. No idea what they gave to him. Oh, third round pick. Oh wait, no, they attached a third. I don't even know. I have no idea. Why can't the internet just be easy? I mean, I'm old. Can't you just give me the answer? Like, why do I have to read these stupid articles? Gosh, 30 giving up their number 42 overall pick in the second round and also getting the Jets set. Okay, so they traded Elijah Moore and the 74th pick for the 42nd pick. So they moved up one round. So if the 49ers had thrown in like a fourth rounder maybe or a third rounder and Debo, they probably would have gotten Elijah Moore and the first round pick. I would say if that's what I was getting in return, I probably in hindsight would make the deal knowing that we've got CMC and it is a little bit redundant between the two. But back then, man, Debo was like everything for this offense. What he had done the year prior, not knowing CMC was coming. At that point, like it was a good feeling to keep him. But in hindsight, I would say that if I could go back and redo it, knowing that CMC was coming in, if that was still going to happen and everything else played out the same, I would have traded him to the Jets, taken back Elijah Moore, and thrown in maybe like a third or a fourth round pick to get it done. And I would have felt pretty comfortable about that. So, yeah, that hurts to say.
Debo, if you're listening.
Oh, it's fine. I'm sure he'll block me on Twitter or whatever. It's not a big deal. It's not a big deal, Debo. Just got your signature there. Anyways, all right. I want to end the show on a little bit different note, and I want to get feedback from the chat on this one as well. So, chat, throw it out there. I'm curious to see what your favorite moment is. What is the one moment, chat, that you remember most, that you hold most fond in your heart when it comes to the San Francisco 49ers? Was it a play? Was it a game? Was it an experience with a family member? What is that one moment that you remember most that is a big deal to you and will forever probably be like that one moment that you cherish forever when it comes to the San Francisco 49ers? Suneil, I will let you go first on this one. Why don't you let us know what your moment is when it comes to the San Francisco 49ers?
Yeah, so it's going to be the game that solidified me as a 49er fan. It was the 94 Super Bowl. Steve Young, 6 touchdowns against the Chargers. I remember it vividly. You know, I was, fairly young. I was in 94, 11. So maybe 10, 11. So yeah, that game, I just remember being so in awe of Steve Young and, the team winning. And that was kind of when I was starting to figure out what team I wanted to follow. And it ended up solidifying me. Steve Young's still my favorite player to this day. And, unfortunately, that's the last Super Bowl that the 49ers have won. But I feel like there's one coming up pretty soon.
Yeah, I hope so too. Yeah, this for a regular season moment, this was about as cool as it gets. That was a hell of a game. That I remember how intense I was, scared the kids a little bit, going a little bit psycho when the 49ers beat the Saints in 2019. That was a really, really good game. And I had talked so much trash to a Saints fan that I knew. We had a bet on the game, so that one felt even better. I like that one. The catch, the Walsh era, and then Mose with music to my ears, because this is it for me too, man. Oh, just lost Suneil. Hold on a second. Let me change this real quick. There we go. This is it for me as well, Mose. The catch too. Just because everything that had happened up to that point. Now, the Super Bowl that Suneil brought up, obviously that's a big one as well. I was old enough to remember the last time the 49ers won a championship. Steve Young was also my favorite player. But the Green Bay Packers had knocked the 49ers out of the playoffs 3 years running up until this point. And here they come again. Got to beat the Green Bay Packers if they want to do anything in the playoffs. Brett Favre had come off of 3 straight MVPs. And quite frankly, the Packers owned the 49ers in the playoffs. Those games were not particularly close. It was like 13 points or more, I believe, in every game that they beat the 49ers. And they kind of came out of nowhere. I remember that first year in the playoffs. Again, I was much younger, so it's not like I was breaking down film or anything like that. But I remember thinking, oh, Green Bay, like who's this team? The 49ers are definitely winning this one. That was not the case at all, man. They beat the brakes off the Niners, then they did it for the next 2 years in a row. And then here we go again, year 4, got to play Green Bay. And just how that game played out, Terrell Owens, multiple drops in that game. I don't remember how many. It was like 4 or 5 drops. He was a young player. And quite frankly, the 49ers should have lost that game. Jerry Rice fumbled the ball. If there was instant replay, 49ers would have lost that game. But we don't have to agree on that for right now. I know that's a sensitive subject. but they didn't. They didn't lose that game based on that play, the way that the rules were written in. So here it comes. They need a touchdown right here. Steve Young drops back. And John Madden had a great call on this. I think it was Madden and Summerall. But I actually like the 49ers radio call on this one. And when Terrell Owens brought the ball down between three players and that announcer yelled, "He caught it. He caught it. He caught it." I mean, that every time I hear that, even today, it brings back chills for me, puts me in a state at a completely different age in my life, in a different era, and just remembering how much that game at that time meant to me as a fan after the way that they had lost the three previous games back to back to back years to the Packers. That's that moment for me, man. That is that moment for me. So anyways, curious to see what you got. Yeah, he McDonald's Wi-Fi, we talked about it the whole night. His hour's up, man. Time to get back. Time to get back. Oh man. Cryptic says Falcons versus Niners and Candlestick to clinch the playoff spot. Wasn't planning on going. Made a last second. That's a good play on words. Last second choice to go with my dad. That Bowman interception was magical. Yeah, the pick at the stick, man. That was good. And my favorite defense, hoping for number 6. There's a lot of really good moments. And I would say another one for me was another wild card game. Jeff Garcia in the comeback against the Giants. I believe it was 2002, if I'm not mistaken. The major comeback. I remember, so my dad was a 49er fan. This game had gotten so out of hand that he stayed upstairs to watch the game, and I went downstairs to watch it in my room because I was losing my mind that they were getting beat by the Giants, a team that I thought they were clearly better than. And I just couldn't be around anyone. And then the comeback, the last, I would say, maybe series or so, I watched with my dad. We were able to kind of reunite because I'd calmed down a little bit. That was huge. The Green Bay games with Kaepernick, oh my gosh, those were massive. There is so many great memories. And this is why I wish for the younger generation that hasn't seen a Super Bowl yet or a Super Bowl victory by the 49ers. This is why I want that for y'all so much. I mean, yes, there are great moments, but a Super Bowl is a must. But this franchise is so rich with tradition and moments, and everybody can point to different ones depending on when you grew up. There's a lot. There's a lot out there that we can pull from. Let me see what else there is. 2021 season was magical. Yeah, man. I mean, there's a lot. Growing up in the 80s and 90s, hating the Cowboys. Yeah, that was that Cowboy hate, different level hate. I was sitting at the 50-yard line at that game. Jesse, lost my voice for a week. I bet, man. I bet. Yeah, the catch 3, Vernon Davis. Hell yeah. 94 Super Bowl. Definitely. Here, just the play itself, not how much it meant. Obviously, the catch 1 was to get to a Super Bowl. That's a whole different magnitude. But just the play, if from beginning to end, which catch was the best individual play for that moment? Obviously, the catch 1 meant the most. It was go to a Super Bowl. It was to change a franchise. The outlook of the 49ers was completely different up until that season and that point. So I know the magnitude of what the catch meant was the biggest in history, but just the play itself, which catch do you think was the best? 1, 2, or 3? Curious to see what your thoughts are on that one. I would say probably the second one for me. I mean, maybe I'm a little bit biased, but I would say probably the second one. The catch for you, Vince Scully. Yeah, it is iconic for sure, man. Grew up with my family in Dallas. You were the outcast. That's got to be rough. 55-10 Broncos Super Bowl. Okay. You say the catch 2? I'm with you, man. Might be a little bit biased, but I'm with you. Said the radio call of the divisional game against the Saints in 2011 was magnificent. Here's a little bit of a story for you. So that 2011 game was a big one for me as well. And that would probably be the second moment for me that I would point to. Probably the Super Bowl and then that one. The reason this one was big was I, at the time, was working in retail. And so I had worked it out with my boss where I would come in and basically work like a bell to bell, but I would take a 4-hour break in the middle of the day so I could go watch the game with my dad. And that day on Facebook, I had posted the score, or what I thought would be the score of the game, and I ended up being right down to the point. I had predicted the score of the game, but just that memory, going back, leaving work, watching that game with my dad, that game, the Green Bay game with Kaepernick where he went crazy on the ground, the catch two, the Giants game, the Super Bowl, obviously. Like, those are games that I will fondly remember with my dad as well. He has since passed, so like those are big, big memories for me. And so those are the ones that I kind of hold near and dear to my heart because of that. But that 2011 game, man, predicting the score prior, that was a pretty big deal. I thought that was pretty cool. Anyways, I hope that y'all enjoyed the way the show ended. Suneil had to go take care of some things. Appreciate him for being on. You can definitely subscribe to his channel. Link is in the chat. I will be back tomorrow with Grant, 49ers After Dark. For sure, that's happening this week. And then after that, we're going to do a call-in show right here on Last Second Sports Open Mic. So be ready to get your takes off around 10:15, 10:30-ish tomorrow night Eastern time. Yeah, 96 yards against the Jets, the walk-off. That was huge. You guys are still throwing your moments in. Appreciate y'all. Peace.